storyline from the last 7 days since we last spoke here on the podcast. Konnor Griffin, #1 prospect in Major League Baseball, making his long-awaited debut. Now, for everybody out there, Konnor Griffin, #1 prospect in baseball for the Pittsburgh Pirates, shortstop, and he's the youngest high schooler to debut, I believe, since 1994. The youngest American to debut in a big league game since Bryce Harper, and the youngest period since Juan Soto. So you're talking about a very select group of young players. And to be 19 years old and making it to the big leagues, it is insane. 2 years ago, guys, Konnor Griffin was a 17-year-old graduating from Jackson Prep in Jackson, Mississippi, and now he's in the big leagues playing shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's truly a wild story, but that just tells you just how talented, Konnor Griffin is. I know we talked about it in one of our emailers asked about, prospects that they should be looking out for. And I said, Konnor Griffin is coming to the big leagues very soon. I didn't think it would be a couple of days after the podcast dropped, but I did realize that guy's really good. He's a really good player, and it was going to be hard to keep him in AAA after they decided not to have him break camp with the big club. A couple of days go by. I know people are kind of like, well, if he was that ready after 4 days, you could have just let him start with the big club. I don't disagree with that necessarily, but they decided to do that. But now he's in the big leagues, makes his debut against the Baltimore Orioles, batting 7th. They didn't have him hit too high. You don't want to put that much pressure on the 19-year-old, but he comes up, and I think the thing I was so impressed about watching his debut, because I watched about 90% of that game, his first at bat. Actually, before his first at bat, he starts a nice 6-4-3 double play, so he's getting involved in the action defensively, and then he comes up in the next inning with a runner on base, and he sees 2 nasty sweepers from Kyle Bradish, both on the outer third going out of the zone, and he takes 2 big swings in the first 2 pitches of the at-bat. And then Kyle Bradish, when watching this at-bat, you're saying, okay, they're clearly showing Konnor Griffin a lot of respect here because they didn't come at him with fastballs. They just said, no, welcome to the big leagues, kid. Here comes 2 nasty breaking balls. And then he gets a breaking ball on the inner third of the plate, stays on it, and drills it into the left center field gap for an RBI double for his first big league hit in his first big league at bat. His family was going crazy. The fans in Pittsburgh were going crazy because they're like, man, after waiting, the time is now. We now have the crown jewel of our farm system, the crown jewel in minor league baseball, playing in the big league. So a really cool moment there for Konnor Griffin. The first weekend, that was his only hit. That RBI double in his first at bat. He ended up going 1 for 9 in the weekend, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. So he wasn't overwhelmed. It wasn't like he was 1 for 9 with 8 punch outs. 1 for 9, had 2 walks in there, 2 strikeouts. He's been putting the ball in play. But yeah, man, the excitement that you feel from fans in Pittsburgh, it's palpable, right? You can feel it, and you could see it on display. Sold out the entire weekend there in Pittsburgh, and you see Konnor Griffin. And I think this is one of the most impressive things to me about him. You obviously know the tools. Big-time power and speed. He hit 20 homers last year. He swiped 60 bags as an 18-year-old in the minor leagues, had a 950 OPS. So the numbers back it up. But it's the physicality of Konnor Griffin that really stands out. He's 6'3", 222 pounds. Like, you're talking about a grown man. I know he's 19, but that's a grown man, wide receiver, strong safety, playing shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so it's so easy to see why scouts and front office looked at him as a first rounder and said, yeah, this is going to be an absolute monster. He played football there in Mississippi, and you're seeing a guy that you're saying, clearly this was a 2-sport athlete, whether it was football or basketball or whatever he decided to do. You could say with that frame, he was going to be successful. And you see what that projection could be. It's like when he continues to get older and learns how to, you already say at 6'3", 222, like you don't need to really fill your frame out anymore, but the guys start to get in the gym a little bit more, do some different things, and you're talking about a guy that could easily turn himself into a 30, 35 homer guy with the big time speed, and that is a truly dynamic player as a shortstop. So Konnor Griffin making his debut in the big leagues. I know, looking at where the Pittsburgh Pirates are, this is my thing when I'm thinking about the Pittsburgh Pirates and I'm thinking about Konnor Griffin coming up, and you have all this excitement in the city of Pittsburgh. The time is now for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And what I mean by that is this. You have arguably the best starting pitcher on the face of the earth in Paul Skeens, or 1A if you say it's Tarek Skubal in Detroit. Paul Skeens is 1A. You have a young rotation of big-time arms, whether it's Braxton Ashcraft, whether it's Bubba Chandler, Mitch Keller still in that rotation. They have this young kid, Seth Hernandez, in the minor leagues throwing 103 miles an hour. He's probably going to get fast-tracked to the big leagues at some point, and there's nothing more coveted than young, controllable starting pitching. And the Pittsburgh Pirates have that right now. Then you also have the number one prospect in baseball in Konnor Griffin that you just promote to the big leagues. You have him starting at shortstop every day now. And you look at this team and you say, man, this could be the time where we're talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates potentially being a sneaky wild card team. And I say sneaky. I know they've been the sexy pick for some people because of the starting pitching. I'm just curious to see if they can score enough runs. I think they're going to be able to pitch because of the names I just mentioned. When you have Paul Skeens starting every fifth day, you're going to have an opportunity to win a lot of ball games. But I just want to be able to see it. They've added to their lineup. They went out and got Brandon Lau this offseason. You went out and got Ryan O'Hearn. Both of those guys have, added a punch to their lineup. O'Neal Cruz has been swinging the bat really well. He's having some issues defensively, which we're going to have to talk about at some point because 10, 12 days into the season, the center field experiment does not seem to be going well. But that's another story for another day. But he has been swinging the bat. And that was something we talked about. Could he be a guy that really stood out in that lineup and added some length to it? And then you have Konnor Griffin. Like, you're not expecting him to carry that lineup, but the talent's there, the tools are there, and he's going to be able to do some special things wherever they decide to hit him along the way. And for a city in Pittsburgh that is a great baseball town, that is a great sports town, so much baseball history, and they've gotten to the postseason. You might not believe this, but this is accurate. They've gotten to the postseason a total of 3 times in the last 33 years. Now, wherever you're listening or you're watching the podcast, you're like, Russ, that's crazy. That has to be wrong. It is not. If you want to go to Baseball Reference and fact check me, please do that. 3 postseason appearances in 33 years, and all 3 of those appearances were consecutive. 2013, 2014, 2015, like you're talking that Andrew McCutchen golden age of Pirates baseball in the 2010s. And that was it. After the Barry Bonds era, and Andy Van Slyke and those guys in the 90s, it was a long time, before they got back to the postseason. And now it's been a long time since they've been to the postseason after that, since 2015. And now you have a team where it's like, these guys have talent. They have starting pitching. They have athleticism. They've added some bump into their lineup. And you look at that team and say, man, some things go their way, and they could be a team that's playing meaningful games in September. And so for the Pittsburgh Pirates, they have not had a ton of success. They've had a fan base that has been begging their ownership group to spend some money. And they spent a little bit of money, this offseason, especially on a guy like a Ryan O'Hearn, and they were trying to get in on some other guys, and they did want to add. But now is going to be the time, right? Like, if they're going to be able to continue to play good baseball, which they've played decent baseball here in the first couple of weeks of the season, I'm interested to see what they do, especially as we get closer to the deadline here in the next few months. But Konnor Griffin's debut, really exciting time for the Pittsburgh Pirates and Pirates fans.